Breaking news on this Monday night. It is 8 o'clock, and for the third night in a row, a curfew is now in effect across Portland. Sky 8, as you can see, over downtown right now. And you can see also the curfew is not stopping protesters. That is a wide shot, but we've been following them all evening. Today, in case you're counting, marks 1 week exactly since a Minnesota police officer kneeled on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes. And after saying he couldn't breathe several times, Floyd died. That officer has now been charged with murder. Again, that happened in Minneapolis. It set off nationwide protests over the social injustice people in the black community have faced for generations. Many peaceful protests have turned violent, and that has led to some major changes tonight. Governor Kate Brown here in Oregon has activated 50 National Guard members and 100 Oregon State Police troopers to help Portland police officers basically keep control of this crowd. Now we once again have crews on the ground following the groups which did converge on the Burnside Bridge. Now we have them marching through downtown. One group started in Southeast Portland at Revolution Hall and then started marching to downtown, coming over the Burnside. A second group started downtown, now marching with the first. They basically all converged. Looks like they're headed west. That is Pioneer Square right there downtown. We don't have any word on a final destination. It's not like they've posted plans online, but we've seen the protests so far center around Pioneer Courthouse Square, as you can see, and the Justice Center. And once again, that has been the source and the scene of several explosive protests over the last few days. And that is why police have closed some streets around the Justice Center and around the federal courthouse. You can see that area downtown closed. It's the area specifically from Southwest 1st to 5th and from Southwest Taylor to Jefferson. Police are blocking all cars and all pedestrians because of, quote, safety concerns and criminal activity. Let's check in with our Catherine Cook, who was with the groups where they first gathered today. Catherine.
Good evening, Maggie. The majority of the people who met here tonight at Revolution Hall have left. They have taken the streets, as you mentioned earlier, and have already crossed the Burnside Bridge. But if you look behind me, you can see there are several people here still hanging out, talking amongst themselves, both here near the building and at the park as well. This was touted as a block party. They had music, they had food, they had speaker after speaker. People chanted. This was a time of solidarity for protesters tonight. This was organized by the Pacific Northwest Youth Liberation Front. If that name sounds familiar, they've been responsible for organizing several of the protests you've seen and that we've covered over the last 3 days. This one was framed as a group gathering in vengeance of George Floyd and anyone who's been harmed by police. They met for about an hour tonight before disbanding and starting their march. Maggie, as you mentioned, this is just one of several protests that we've seen tonight and that are going on right now. Earlier this afternoon, we were in Northeast Portland at a different kind of protest, a different one entirely, over on Northeast 57th and Sandy. That was organized as an effort to bring together families and kids. Folks were asked to wear masks, and several dozen people showed up. And then it was actually talked about as a fundraiser for Equitable Giving Circle, an organization that promotes minorities. But something interesting happened during that protest. Folks from that Equitable Giving Circle organization showed up and said, please leave. This is something we did not organize or support. It was somebody who lived in this neighborhood, and they were pretty upset. They felt that it was disrespectful to organize a protest on behalf of minorities without asking that specific organization if they wanted to have money raised for them. So they asked everybody to leave. Several did, but by then the crowd was so big, Maggie, that many just stayed and held their signs, none the wiser as drivers went by and honked their horns in support. Back to you.
All right, Catherine Cook live for us. Catherine, thank you so much for the update. We appreciate it. Earlier this evening, we saw a large group stage a die-in on the Burnside Bridge. Look at that crowd. They laid down in the street. This is like in the last hour or so. They blocked traffic. Obviously, again, a die-in in memory of George Floyd. And after that, they got up and marched again. So that's the same group that you're seeing marching through downtown from what we can tell. All right, so how did we get here? We always want to put this in perspective. George Floyd died on Monday, May 25th, The next day, 4 officers involved, including the one who knelt on his neck, were fired, and protests began in Minneapolis. On Wednesday, protests began in other cities, and they continued growing across the country on Thursday. They became explosive in Minneapolis Thursday night. Then, on Friday, the officer involved, Derek Chauvin, now former officer, was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. That does it for this update here. After the 8 o'clock curfew went into effect, we will be bringing you updates on social media and at kgw.com.
Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up.
You're watching video just into our newsroom on a fourth night of massive protests in downtown Portland. That from our crew near the Multnomah County Justice Center about a half hour ago. I'm Maggie Vespa. Thank you for joining us. This is a view from Sky 8 right now. You can see that's clearly Pioneer Square. We've had people, I believe, yeah, that is Pioneer Square. We've had people marching north through the city from the Justice Center, where there was fencing blocking off some of the streets after a couple of nights. Protesters targeted the Justice Center, police saying they would not let them through. So protesters on the move once again after sitting and kneeling in front of the Justice Center. While that was going on, we were watching on Twitter, watching on social media. There was a really interesting interaction that kind of just preceded this marching now, where protesters sat and they knelt in front of the Justice Center in the street. There were hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, filling the street, and protesters asked to talk to a police officer on the other side of the fence. Portland police around 8:30 or so tweeted, "Demonstrators are asking to talk to police. We want to talk to you too. Our demonstration liaison officers are on their way." They did send an officer. And from what we've been seeing on social media, there was a conversation happening. But according to the Portland Mercury, the officer told the protester, after a few back and forths that seemed relatively peaceful and constructive, that he didn't want to have the conversation basically on a loudspeaker. And protesters also repeatedly asked to cross the fence. They were told again that was a no-go. Police reminding people that there are people in jail in the Multnomah County Justice Center, and that there are employees inside that building. At one point, a protester did turn around when the crowd kind of got restless and asked people to police themselves, saying, "If we don't, the police will do it for us." Again, here's a live look from Sky 8. We've just been seeing a crowd of what appears to be thousands from our estimation, and our crews have been kind of on all edges of this crowd. Again, keep in mind, this is amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and you are just seeing people packed into the streets. So far tonight, it has been peaceful. People with their hands up, marching, kneeling, sitting, getting to the areas that are fenced off where the streets are closed, asking to go through, sort of demanding police let them through. And again, they turned around and left, and now they're marching through downtown once again. If we could take some video of the Burnside Bridge earlier tonight, you can also kind of see what led up to this. This is a Sky 8 shot around 7:30 or so, the Burnside Bridge. That's a die-in. People lying on the bridge in honor of George Floyd, a man that 1 week ago today died during an arrest. He was under arrest by police in the Minneapolis area. A police officer, now famously for 9 minutes, put his knee on Floyd's neck. And Floyd started saying, "I can't breathe," asking to be let up, calling for his mom at one point. 3 other officers helped hold Floyd down, even though he was not resisting, as we've all seen the video. And he eventually died. The officer who had his knee to his neck, the now ex-police officer, has been charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. But, you know, as we've been covering for days, the days that it took for any charges to be filed, and just the video itself and the outrage and pain that it sparked, or that it sort of revealed, because it's been ongoing for generations, has sparked protests across the country. And we've had now 4 nights of protests, massive protests, that have turned at times into violent riots in Portland. We've had 3 nights subsequently of an 8 p.m. curfew, which we are obviously well beyond at this point, but we have yet to really see that be enforced, the curfew itself. As long as people are remaining peaceful when they walk through Portland, which is what they're doing right now, when they march through Portland, when they chant, when they say things like, "I can't breathe," over and over, "Hands up, don't shoot," over and over, say his name, George Floyd, over and over. Police let them do that. Largely, it's been when things have turned into riots that you start seeing police show up en masse in riot gear. And today we saw a marked shift from Oregon officials calling in, activating the National Guard. The first time they've done that in Oregon since the 80s. This was after a conversation that Democratic governors across the country had with President Trump this morning, where he basically urged them to do so. He also went on TV today and said that he was sending in the military, just in general, to sort of help control the protests nationwide. So that language from officials today, sort of the backdrop in front of which these protests are now happening tonight, that is a shift as far as the tactics, crowd control tactics that we've seen, or at least seen promised. But thus far, the first night of protests since obviously any of that happened, this has remained largely peaceful. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Sky 8 over Pioneer Square downtown. And we've had protesters marching through downtown Portland after we had them in front of the Multnomah County Justice Center. And I want to actually, if we can bring back up the video where you can hear them chanting in front of the Justice Center that our photographer shot about a half an hour ago. Let's take a listen to that.
Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up.
Again, just hands up, don't shoot, over and over. Protesters have a loudspeaker. That crowd, I mean, look at it. It filled the street for blocks. It's still filling the street for blocks. People packed in, a lot of them wearing masks because of the pandemic, but just an absolutely huge showing of support and of anger, support for George Floyd, anger at police violence and generations of it. Again, this is night 4, if you're keeping track of these just massive protests in Portland. We had a protest on Thursday night, but it was much smaller and it was much quieter. Thursday famously was the night that protests in Minneapolis really exploded and became riots. A police precinct burned, businesses burned. The next night, Friday, that outrage, that anger sparked similarly in cities across the country. Portland was no exception. So out here tonight, again, we have hundreds, if not thousands, it looks like thousands from this aerial view, who have been marching through downtown. They came across the Burnside Bridge. That was when we saw that die-in protest. They started in multiple points throughout the city. There's a shot of that die-in once again, stopping traffic, as you can see, on the Burnside Bridge. We had some in Southeast Portland who started at Revolution Hall. We had protesters beginning downtown at Pioneer Square. They converged here on the bridge and staged this die-in together. Again, you can just see hundreds packing the bridge there. They were there for several minutes before getting up and marching toward the downtown core. If we can take Sky 8 once again. Oh, so we're going to take this. This is actually really interesting. We've seen police shutting off parts of downtown. And when we showed you that shot of the crowd, you might have noticed that there was a fence there. There was a reason that everybody was packed in and so stagnant. And that's because Portland police, in an effort to protect the Justice Center and protect Portland Police headquarters, the Bureau's headquarters, they have closed off that section of downtown. It's an area from Southwest 1st to 5th and Southwest Taylor to Jefferson downtown. Earlier, when we saw the crowd sitting in front of or next to the Justice Center, and a police officer at protesters' demand walked up to talk with them, to engage with them through the fence. They asked the police officer, basically, let us through, let us peacefully march through this section of downtown, which has been the source of so much chaos over the last few nights. And police said that they would not do that. And then that was kind of when the conversation seemed to hit a bit of a lag based on what we're seeing on social media. And police basically said they didn't want to have the conversation in front of a crowd of this size over a loudspeaker. They were happy to talk with demonstrators, but they couldn't let them through. They couldn't let them near the Justice Center. That shot pulling back from downtown. Just look at that. You can see the crowd filling the streets between the buildings. Downtown has just been the source of so much anger and so much rage. People have been marching at one point on Friday over the weekend. They were marching through the Lloyd district, and we just saw people start to spread out. Oh, wow. Guys, so this is a live look, and that is the American flag. That is the American flag at Pioneer Square. Pretty positive that guy is sitting on top of the Starbucks, and he has a knife, and he's cutting it down. At least it seems like he's trying. He's cutting down the rope that is holding up the American flag. Largely, it seems like we're hearing people cheering. And you can see some objects start to fly. I just heard from the booth. Can you guys say that one more time? Oh, thank you. So my producer pointing out, yeah, we are hearing some people boo as well, definitely. And that sort of speaks to, a contrast that we're seeing. We've had these protests start peacefully, and they've been organized by local civic groups and local agencies that sort of support social justice. And then when they've sort of devolved into riots, we've heard about people worried that the message of one group was corrupted by another. And these are massive crowds. There's arguably, obviously, going to be a diverse swath of opinions among the people that are there. And you just see it here in this kind of sort of looking myopically at this instance. People, some happy, some upset, some just yelling while that American flag seemingly was being cut down. And now it seems like just hands up. Let's listen. That is the American flag. Turned upside down. If you're just joining us, this is a KGW photographer walking through a dense, packed crowd at Pioneer Courthouse Square. He's trying to ask if he can get through. People marched through downtown. They sat and knelt by the Justice Center earlier. They talked with police who were on the other side of a chain link fence that was set up to blockade off a giant section of downtown. They asked police if they could go through, which would have let them get to the front door of the Multnomah County Justice Center. It would have let them get to the Portland Police Bureau's headquarters. And they also asked if they could talk to police and just basically talk about the issues that we're all grappling with: racism, police violence, systemic racism. And a police officer did come and did speak with them for quite some time, from what we're seeing on social media. And then when they asked to be let through, for the fence to be moved and for them to be able to march through that area that is closed off in downtown Portland, they were told no. Police saying they have people in jail inside the Multnomah County Justice Center. They have people working inside the Multnomah County Justice Center. And after the last few nights, when that building has been spray painted, windows have been smashed, one night fires were set inside, they said they could not let protesters through. And that seems to be an American flag that was brought to the protest. That was not the one that someone was trying to cut down earlier. That sign there saying "I can't breathe." What George Floyd said over and over throughout those 9 minutes. Here they're calling for a moment of silence, so let's just listen in and see how this goes.
Please, a moment of silence.
That was a moment of silence at Pioneer Courthouse Square in downtown Portland. Man, that crowd is massive. So they were just marching through downtown after trying to enter a portion of the city that police have blocked off. Keep in mind, this is the first night where the National Guard has been activated in Oregon, something the governor of Oregon hasn't done since the 80s when the state was trying to grapple with the Rajneesh cult in Antelope, Oregon. So right now what we're seeing, what we've been seeing all night, is a peaceful protest, a massive protest, but a peaceful protest. That said, if things do turn violent, which they have for the last 3 nights in a row, Portland police will have some new, very big backup in the Oregon National Guard. Everyone here seeming to want to keep this peaceful and constructive from what we've seen. We're going to stay on this throughout the evening, and we're going to keep following these crowds. We have Sky 8 up. We have multiple crews on the ground, and we're going to bring you updates on social media and online and on air as well later. So stay with us here on KGW.com, and we'll see you later on tonight.